Okay, the Planning Commission meeting for January 5th, 2026 is called to order. Could I have roll call, please?
Member Peterson?
Here.
Member Sparks Gillis?
Here.
Member Ziegler?
Here.
Vice Chair Adler?
Here.
Chair Williams?
Here.
Thank you.
Bill, would you lead us in the pledge?
Ready, pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, does anybody want to change anything on the agenda or the order of the agenda?
I'll move approval of the agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0. So now we come to the election of a chairperson and vice chairperson.
Looking for a motion?
A motion or a nomination, or,
I would nominate Jack to be the chair.
I'll second
I'll
that.
second.
Yep.
well, thank you. Nobody else? Okay, all in favor of
Aye.
Jack remaining chair?
Aye.
Do you want to be vice?
Aye, passes 5-0. Public comment.
What, got to do the vice chair.
Oh, vice chair.
May as well be a clean slate, huh?
I'd nominate Keith Adler to be vice chair.
I second that.
Okay. Keith is moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
I haven't forgotten anything else, have I? No. So we go to public comment. Public may address the commission on items not on the agenda and on consent. Would anybody like to speak? Doesn't look like we have anybody on Zoom. So we'll close public comment and go to the consent items. Does anybody have anything they'd like to discuss in the consent items or poll?
Nope.
No? Can I get a motion to approve as presented?
I'll move to approve.
Second?
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, passes 5-0. Ex parte communications. Anybody have anything they'd like to report? So we're down to item 6. Lisa, would you read that for us, please?
Public hearing to consider adoption of Planning Commission Resolution 2601, recommending to the City Council amendments to the vacation rental short-term rental section 111220 of Chapter 12, Title 11 of the Solvang Municipal Code.
Thank you. So, could we have the staff report on this, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you. So this evening, we are going over the short-term rental ordinance amendments. We took this item to you, I want to believe it's early or fall. I'm just going to put it as fall. And we got some feedback from your end. We took it to council as well. So this is now sort of in its final form. So we are seeking this evening a recommendation to the city council to go ahead and approve the ordinance. So just a little bit of background for those who are noticing this for the first time, and also as a reminder to the commission, our previous short-term rental or vacation rental ordinance was adopted in 2014 through an emergency ordinance. This came about due to a property owner who was seeking a variance for operating a short-term rental, and the city discovered they had no such ordinance. That ordinance was in place, and then again, it was codified with no changes in 2016 to make it permanent. Since that time frame, which is almost 10 years now, since the official codification is there's been a lot of technology and platform changes, and that's really outpaced our existing regulations. So our existing vacation rental ordinance, short-term rental ordinance was built mainly to be a little bit more hands-off, less regulatory in nature, but in doing so, it basically it left a lot of things up to the operator to perform and really no checks and balances from that end from the city staff perspective. We had noted that to the city council as a part of its goal setting session in fiscal year 24-26. And we had noted quite a bit of illegal short-term rentals that were out there in operation and not remitting their either their transit occupancy tax or just plain in operation and in zones in our neighborhoods. So in March 2025, the City Council directed city staff to begin working on amending this ordinance. So again, why are we updating the ordinance? The first one is the lack of enforcement tools. So in 2014 and in 16, an ordinance was put together really looking at sort of how can we enforce these with not as many staff members available, and then how do we do it so it kind of just runs on an autopilot, essentially. There were sort of software programs available at the time, but I don't know if city staff then understood those parameters and really looked into that. So this is why you have the ordinance, which is really more heavily reliant on the operators to do work versus the city staff and or an ordinance enforcement tool there. The other one was a lack of applicant follow-up. And so a big one is in our existing ordinance, our current permit holders are about over 20 permit holders. They are supposed to every December and January, they're supposed to send out notices of who they are and who they're basically what's an emergency contact, et cetera, to neighbors within 300 or to neighbors within 100 feet. I've never seen one of those. Usually, if that happens, they come to the city and ask for the addresses. We would provide that to you. But again, there's no follow-up in our existing ordinance. There's limited safety and inspection requirements. As a matter of fact, by limited, meaning there are none. So we currently don't know if these houses have working smoke detectors. We don't know if these houses have working carbon monoxide detectors. These are actually required by law to be working as a part of your home. We currently don't have a permit cap or any sort of oversight in terms of that permit cap. And then the other big one, this ordinance was adopted in 2014, and during that time frame, the state of California has begun legislating how to preserve existing housing stock, and so housing availability concerns, and particularly long-term housing, is in our forefront in terms of our adopted housing element, as well as the housing element that was here at the time of 2014 and 2016. But again, the current code as it stands really doesn't address those sort of long-term housing goals that our current housing element requires us by goals and policies to address over our reporting years. So sort of just this reminder of the genesis of where this update is coming from. The flags in red that you see on your screen, those were properties that the city's current software provider, who basically combs through all these listings, whether it's Airbnb, VRBO, stay at home. There's literally hundreds of these vacation rental platforms. So everything that you see flagged in red were homes that were operating short-term rental permits without a permit over the last 3 years. So the ones in green, clearly green means go, were the ones that we permitted. And so quite a few of them were in our village, is where they were supposed to be intended, but also in the original ordinance, a few R3 properties were allowed to be in the program. And then you'll see that one lone green flag in our commercial zone. That's the mercantile, and a decision was made by city staff a few years back to allow a short-term rental there as well, because we used to define a hotel as 5 or more units. I don't I kind of know why, and it's because we made a differential between the bed and breakfast, but again, the bed and breakfasts, as much as we love them, they've kind of gone way of the dodo because of the short-term rental industry itself. So again, that was us not updating our definitions, not looking forward, and just being really just stuck in time. And that time happened to be 1985, 86. So sort of that consequence of not looking at your codes and getting up with the times. So the key features of the proposed new ordinance is a citywide permit-based regulatory framework, and by citywide meaning it applies to every zone of the city. There is a cap, so we're capping these at 40 units and implementing a waiting list if we hit that cap. Right now, based on that cap, we don't look like we're going to hit those. Some of our current permit holders can actually drop out. We do have a couple operators that operate multiple units, essentially at 3 units, or a couple of them have 5 or 6 units. They're de facto hotels, and they're actually zoned in the village mixed use. So a hotel is, guess what? A hotel. And so you don't need a permit for that. And again, that's basically closing that loop of, saying, well, if it's under 5, it's a bed and breakfast or whatever we called it back then. We've amended our definitions and we've took care of that. Short-term rentals are limited to the village mixed use zone versus this carve-out approach. So again, there are approximately 6-7 properties that are currently listed in our ordinance that are now zoned R3 that you're allowed to do vacation rentals. Again, and of those, we do have a couple properties that are vacant. And so our housing element specifically says, hey, if it's an R3 high-density property, thou shalt go build high-density housing. And so it's there for a reason. We went through a complete rezone battle, and housing, long-term housing is a pretty tough thing to do. So again, we're sort of eliminating that R3 carve-out with an exception. And so that's this idea of that if you're an existing permit holder in those zones, you will actually be able to apply for a permit. However, I don't want to call it grandfathering in. It's basically a non-transferable permit, and I'll get into that in a minute. So again, the areas that you see on your screen, it's a little bit more dialed down. It's the areas in pink. That's our village mixed use areas. So those areas that you see in pink are the only zones that would be allowed short-term rentals with that one caveat. So again, this ordinance also implements our housing element. Again, our housing element is looking to preserve that long-term housing stock. So it prohibits short-term rentals in ADUs. We kind of already do that in our ADU ordinance, but again, we're doing that cross-referencing between the different sections to make it crystal clear. If you're doing an ADU, you cannot do a short-term rental. And that actually does specifically apply to the village mixed-use zone as well. So there are a couple properties that are able to construct ADUs in there. Again, we're going to limit that. Our SB9 units, we actually do not have any SB9 units in the city. Those are your two lot dwelling units. It's not a duplex. It's a completely different animal, as well as the SB9 lot split. We don't have any of those in the city, but they can happen. So that'll prohibit that as well. And then affordable housing, that's the other thing. So, what I call the double dip. So if you're taking advantage of housing in the village mixed use, and you're going to double dip and utilizing that state density bonus that gives you more density or reduced parking standards, whatever the flavor you're looking for, and then you're going to turn some of those into short-term rentals, I don't think so. So we're going to prevent the double dip. It does allow existing permit holders outside the village mixed use to continue operations. So like I said, there are a handful of those operators outside of the VMU in that R3 and that one property in the mercantile. You can apply for permits within a certain time frame. However, the permit cannot be transferred upon sale, conveyance, etc. So essentially, it will extinguish in one point in time, but you can't. If you put the property up for sale and it has a short-term rental permit on it, and it's one of those R3 properties, your permit will expire once the sale goes through, and that'll recapture it back to a long-term housing property. So again, it's sort of that threading the needle in the middle to not just deem someone expire their permit for no fault of their own, but it sort of allows for a timed expiration of a short-term rental permit in those certain properties. And again, these items really support our regional housing needs assessment and our housing element goals to really support our long-term housing needs, and specifically make it very crystal clear. If you are operating a short-term rental outside of the village mixed use, we will come after you, we will shut you down, and we will fine you. So again, that's part of our enhanced code enforcement approach as part of this ordinance. From a life safety and neighborhood perspective, we are requiring mandatory safety inspections on the onset. And again, it's very similar. You operate a hotel, you have to go through some safety inspections. You operate a short-term rental in our current ordinance, there's nothing. So again, these folks who are visiting us are paying good money. You would at least hope that they would have some sort of life safety preventative measures in their units. This will, the inspection will occur prior to issuance of a permit. Once an inspection is done, we issue the permit pretty quickly. There is now occupancy limits based on bedroom count. So our current ordinance does have occupancy limits, but it's based on age. I'll give an example. My middle kid, he's 15. He don't look 15. he still passes for a good 12-year-old, poor little guy. But with that being said, it just makes it by person. It makes it pretty easy. Parking, trash, and posting requirements are now part of this. So again, making sure that you're parking it per our parking ordinance. If you have, making sure that trash collection is completed. So there are some properties, and I don't know specifically if there are any properties that are currently permitted that don't have trash service, but you're going to have trash service because again, we want to ensure that our short-term rentals are good neighbors. And having a local contact, that's the biggest key. Well, right now we don't have many short-term rental complaints. There are other communities where short-term rental complaints are pretty much a dime a dozen every single weekend. We want to maintain that and keep it that way. So again, we want to make sure that our permit holders do have a local contact. If even what that means is someone within the area who can be at the residence within 60 minutes. So again, someone local to take care of the property, answer any questions that are available, and most importantly, take care of any code issues immediately and squash those. And again, this is more of a preventative issue. We don't have the amount of code complaints for our short-term rentals currently speaking, but you never know. So it's sort of building that into our ordinance. So from an enforcement and compliance, we have graduated penalties and administrative citations. So we really beefed up this section to match exactly what our citations are today. We've given ourselves permit revocation authority. Well, it was kind of extended in the first one. This one makes it crystal clear. Three strikes and you're out. We want you to be a good steward of a short-term rental. We don't want you to be a neighborhood issue. And that includes a 2-year ineligibility after revocation. So think of it as your PED baseball steroid suspension. You're going to be off the list for a little bit there for a good 2 years on the sidelines, and then you can come back after you think about what you did. I hate making a joke of it, but again, these are the last sort of steps that we want to do, but we want these codified, and we want that ability to bring a hammer when we need to bring a hammer. The other one, is there's been a recent legislation that requires a platform reporting requirements if a city codifies it. This was enacted and chaptered and good to go starting January 1st. We're doing it. Again, we really want to make sure we're auditing our existing permit holders, and that people that go ahead and just post on these websites, we want that information ASAP so that we can shut them down. And again, the whole point of this is to limit our short-term rentals in the village mixed use. That's been what the council has sort of given staff the green light to go. We want to ensure that our other zones, especially our other residential zones, are reserved for long-term housing, whether it's rental or for sale units. And so again, utilizing these tools that have been given to us by the state legislature, in this instance, a very positive one, we definitely want to codify that and get in the go. So with that being said, we'll run through the motions. It is consistent with our general plan. Our general plan has various policies. It is in your staff report, sort of to sum this up. It does support our village area tourism focus. Again, that is a specific policy. protects the residential neighborhoods. So in the previous slide, you saw we had a lot of those red flags over the last 45 days. City staff, particularly code compliance, has been working diligently to clean up those red flags. We sent approximately 25 letters out to property owners, letting them know that they had no path forward to obtain a permit. And so those that got letters, a couple were shocked that they actually had their house still listed on on a platform because the house had been sold and it was just sitting out there. So, but again, we got all 25 have actually now come into compliance and removed their advertisements. This promotes our missing middle housing. And again, the whole point is preserve our long-term housing stock. So there are limits to what new residential development, particularly in the village mixed use area, can get permits for. And so that's the biggest key there is you may have a property in the village and you're residential and you want to do this, you're say you have a triplex, you're only limited to one of the 3 units. And again, the intention is to preserve that long-term housing stock. And then again, that advances our anti-displacement strategy because we have to remember that our older units that are here in the village, they are older housing stock. They typically do tend to run lower on the rent stage compared to a new build. So the point is it assumes that those that are paying lower in rent are going to be displaced for short-term rentals. So again, we're working towards that anti-displacement strategy that's in our housing element. So there is one additional staff modification that we are requesting this evening. And city staff is recommending that with a recommendation for approval that the Planning Commission recommends additional amendments for consistency with the proposed ordinance, and that's to amend Table 11.4, Section 11.6.3, and eliminate the permitted or P for short-term rental in the R3, but leave the notes. So again, that it would be not permitted, but the notes there for those that are non-conforming permit holders who elect to come into the new permitting system.
Where's that again? I'm so sorry.
That's something we're recommending. It's not on your. It's not in your packet. No, it's brand new. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, but we are hoping that we get that recommendation. Again, it's a cross-reference just to clean everything up. I apologize for the oversight of this, but we're trying to get the staff report before the new year. So. So from a CEQA standpoint, we are required to do a CEQA review from California Environmental Quality Act. This is exempt. There's no potential environmental impact through guidelines section 15061B3. So this is a regulatory action only. So city staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt Resolution 2601, recommending the City Council amend Section 11.12.20, short-term rentals, vacation rentals, of Chapter 12, Title 11 of the Solvang Municipal Code with an amendment to Section 11.6.3, Table 11.4, eliminating short-term rentals as a permitted use in the R3 zone for consistency. I know that's a handful. But with that, I'll open up to questions of the commission.
Okay, any questions on the staff report before getting into the nitty-gritty of the
On the
regulations?
staff report, no. I think Raphael did a great job.
So somebody who has a vacation rental, whatever we call it, short-term, and they've been, we're not saying them grandfathered in, they've got a valid permit, but back when they got approved, we waived, for whatever reason, Planning Commission parking. Is that, they just come in for the application, or do we say, oh, you gotta now meet the parking requirements?
There was only one permit that I recall has a variance for parking. And it's down the street, actually.
Yes.
That variance runs with the lay of the land. So that
You're gonna,
we have to honor that. As far as everyone else, no.
sure.
So again, and there are a couple of them in that R3 zone that do have it meets the parking. It's per the project, so they're able to go through that. And then there were 2 properties that we specifically flagged in our sort of dragnet of non-permitted permits and then they have subsequently submitted a permit that they have the parking available on site as well. So if you're coming in, you got to provide the parking. That's what it just comes down to.
Another question is on the fees. So everybody, each year they come in, put the application in 30 days prior to expiration, say it's all gonna be January 1 to make it easy, I suppose. That would sure make life easier. They also need to get a business certificate permit, which is the 140 or 110, I can't remember what they are, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
But we don't know what that permit price would, I mean, are we talking $2,000, do you think? Or is, I know you guys will do a study as,
No, no study necessary. It's actually pretty simplistic math. Right now, I believe our permit fee schedule says 300. I believe it will need to be increased to about 400, give or take, and then the renewal should be a little bit cheaper. The software package that we're procuring will typically combo both the fee and the business cert all at the same time to make life a ton easier.
and that will be per unit, not per property.
That is correct. So that is the other thing. That's a big one. It is per unit. So for some of these, like I said, we do have. I know one specifically has a short-term rental for about 5 units, or I don't want to say it's 4. It's these little cottages. They were like 1-bedroom little things, and which they appear to be a motel back in the day or something. But again, they're a hotel under our new code, so they actually don't need a permit.
Because our new code uses the.
Because our new because remember, the old code defined hotels as 5 or more units.
Right.
The new one just says if you're renting a unit less than 30 days, there is no number that's attached to it. So if you want to run a 1-unit hotel, be our guest.
That because, again, the definition, because you're renting for less than 30 days, therefore you get TOT collects. Okay.
Yeah. And you just got to make sure you then run the hotel parking calcs, which is 1 parking space per unit. That's it. And if it's an existing use, then it's been an existing use.
So following up, if a hotel has a kitchenette and they do rent them in the winter to snowbirds, let's just say it, and they got cottages, they're still a hotel even though they rent it for 45 days?
That's
Or
a
does
different
that-
story. Yeah, you're starting to there's typically hotels, they'll either make you change rooms or they'll redo they figure usually it out, but it's 30 days or less. It's plain and simple. Because now we don't want that becomes into the whole hotel conversion, what Buellton's going through, and
Yes.
so we'll stick to the 30 days. We like to stick to the 30 days.
And again, we're not putting a minimum or maximum rental.
We are. So there is a minimum of 30 nights needs to be completed annually.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, on a one renter basis, we're not saying that you can't go over 30 days.
No,
And we're not saying it has to be 28 days.
correct. It's 30 days or less. So if you're operating along, so a good example, and there are a few of them, is you have an ad on Airbnb in the R1 zone for your house for 31 days. That's legal. It's very much legal because, again, the short-term rental is defined as 30 nights or less. So while they're not of infraction of our ordinance, they very much potentially may run afoul of renting to someone at 31 days and that someone becomes
Lawful detainer.
a squatter. Yeah, essentially it becomes a renter's rights issue.
So that's between how they want to operate it.
We're getting out of that, and essentially we get the call and say, hey,
Take them to court. Get
have fun. Yeah,
very-
yeah. It's not our issue. And there have been some horror stories of these. So again, property owners run that risk when they do advertise, their places for more than 31 days, and that's the risk you take.
I think that's probably my questions. Thank you.
I have just one on your presentation. You talked about there were, I think you said hundreds of these companies like Airbnb, and that with this new regulation in the state law, those companies would have to report to the city. Is that how that works?
Yeah, and if Taylor wants to chime in if I get this incorrect. This new state law is now a reporting requirement that a city can codify, basically report out. I was under the impression it was every quarter, but it's every month, correct?
Yes, since we collect TOT on a monthly basis, that allows us to request the reporting from the, what do they call them? Short-term rental facilitators, on a monthly basis, which is what we have in this ordinance. But in general, it's just, it's a law passed by the legislature in order, it's mostly for information collection so that the city can better collect its TOT. But it also provides the city an opportunity if a facilitator does not comply with our requirements, since we have it in an ordinance, that they could be subject to a fine as well.
So then, related to that, how do we monitor that? How do we know that they're actually reporting? I mean, if there's hundreds of them, Airbnb and VRBO are easy ones, but I'm sure the others are a lot smaller. So are we set up in our new software to monitor all these companies and see if they're reporting monthly, or how's that going to work?
Yeah, it's a fun thing actually. If you want to dive into it, it basically crawls all these websites and then geolocates. I don't want to give too much away. It geolocates certain things and then cross-references it against other websites such as Zillow and Redfin if once the pictures match, or even Craigslist based on the other geolocation. So then it then pinpoints the location of it. And then sometimes then based on that, it's able to then look at someone's rental history, and then if days that are booked out, it assumes that it's going to be at an average per night basis.
So actually, you went into more detail than I thought was necessary. So the answer is our software will be able to monitor that
Yes, as a matter of fact, the letters that went out to our 22 property owners, on some instances, we calculated out what their potentially owed TOT was. If they were to shut down within the 7 days, they wouldn't have to owe the TOT, and some of those were in the thousands of dollars. So that's how we used a little bit of a carrot approach to get them out of get them to comply.
Okay, and the existing permit holders, both within and outside, they have to go through this, get a new permit.
Correct.
Based on these regulations. And the first time that happens, will there be an inspection, even though they have an existing permit?
Yes, essentially we will, once the ordinance is passed, we'll be working with Deckard, our software vendor, to put up an online portal, so everything is done online. And then that includes payment as well. And then from there, we'll do what's called an implementation. So essentially, it's us working with Deckard to start the implementation. And then from there, we'll have a go live date and it'll probably be, to be frank with you, it'll probably be after July or July 1 of a go live. And then from there, we're able to then say, hey, our permit portal is open. Please apply for a permit. They have to then submit the required documents of, if home ownership, title, if it doesn't match, the floor plan, the site plan, all that gets submitted digitally.
Parking
and
plan.
Right, and that's the site plan. And then what city staff will do is then also then check our records to make sure there's no illegal construction. They'll need to indicate where their CO2 monitors are, their smoke detectors, their entries, their exits, et cetera. And then once all that's done, we look at it, we're good, we do the inspection. At my previous jurisdiction, we got it down pretty pat, where we basically reviewed it in about an hour, and then we scheduled out inspections, and they were done pretty quick. And then once a unit's passed inspection, we were able to actually mobily basically a mark approved, and then they got emailed a cert and everything else under the sun. So technology is sort of a wonderful thing if you know how to use it.
Yeah.
Will that inspection happen every year for the $400, or
No.
kind of one time? And
It is a one time, and then we will be producing administrative rules, and as part of the renewal process, they'll have to self-certify that those are complete. So again, it's the self-certification is just making sure everything's done. If you're a good operator, you're checking those things anyways. So yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, then we'll,
one last question. I didn't understand the Copenhagen Street. I know that there's I think you had asked the question, how many were exempt But you were saying there's just 3 down there that have current permits?
There's actually, I think, want to say there's 4 properties that
4
have, yeah,
properties.
of the 9.
Of the 9 that are
Correct.
developed. The other 5 also can, but they have to come in and do the, no.
No,
No, it's only these
only if it's been, only if they're current
using
permit
that
holders.
exemption.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's not a retroactive go back. It's if you are a current permit holder. I believe we wrote the date in January 1st.
Yes.
If you're a current permit holder,
That's
you're
it.
you're good.
Okay.
If you're not in the program,
Too late.
too bad. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, well, let's take it out to public comment, if there is any. Nobody in-house, nobody online, so we'll bring it back for discussion. Have any questions, concerns, issues?
I would just comment that I'm glad to see that some steps are being taken to regulate this, especially with the great need that we have for housing in our communities. So thank you for doing that.
And I've got a couple kind of comments, maybe correction. Tell me if I'm wrong, but we use unit a lot, which is great. Page 15 at the top, number 3. I think it's the only place we use it. I just think maybe we need to change it. The second sentence, no more than 1 dwelling unit. Shouldn't it just be short-term unit? We use it twice in that paragraph 3. When I went dwelling, I was like, wait a minute. I think we use short-term unit throughout, all short-term rental, and then we just used no more than 1 dwelling unit per property. But we mean to say short-term unit, just correction, is I think that's it.
I had that same concern, because I looked up in our definitions of dwelling unit, and it actually says for more than 30 days. So it's a long-term,
Yes, where this is a short-term
by
dwelling unit.
by
I
our
guess,
own
but-
definitions.
And then the other correction on page 17, perhaps.
Before you
Yeah.
get that far ahead, I have a couple on that I would like to suggest.
Can I request just a clarification on, are we looking at the number 3 that's kind of lingering on the very top of page 15?
Correct.
It was my understanding that we wrote that in this way because we're talking about multi-unit buildings. So multi-unit buildings might have 5 or 10 dwelling units within them. Only one of those dwelling units could be used as a short-term rental unit. So the unit itself is a dwelling unit in that it can house someone, but only one of those 5, 10 can be used as a short-term rental unit in a multi-unit building.
Where they have common walls.
That like an apartment complex.
No, I understand. It's just, it's a very specific, if that meets it, it's the only place I saw dwelling, but then we talk about, that was the next question I had on units of sharing common walls rather than those that are detached. It was that paragraph was just a little difficult for me to understand, is all I'm saying. I wish we ferreted that out a little bit more. But maybe it's just a special unit. I'm trying to think of the 4 units down on Copenhagen Street, they're individual 4. Then you have the 4 units that were just built by Wine Valley Inn, and there's 4, but it's in one big building with common walls. I don't know. If it sounds good to you guys, it's fine. It just jumped out at me that I saw dwelling in there instead of units, because we were trying to, how many you
Rental
can only
units,
have.
yeah.
I don't know, I got it. I mean, it seems clear to me.
Does it? Okay. Well, then, not an issue.
Okay, so maybe you could look at our definition then of a dwelling unit in section 11.3.1 and see if that's consistent with how we're interpreting it here. I don't think it is.
We can certainly take a look at the language and see if a clarification is necessary when going to council,
Okay.
or if this is to be recommended to council.
So I had a suggestion on page 14, in the very beginning. It says, "This section provides standards to regulate short-term rentals." Nowhere in here is there a definition of a short-term rental. It might be helpful to reference section 11.3.1, which does define short-term rentals, just so it's clear where people can go to find a definition of a short-term rental. I don't think you need to put the whole thing in here, but maybe just a reference to that section.
No, that's a good suggestion.
And on the same page on item D, section 2, at the very end of that first paragraph, it says, "Short-term rental units shall not be operated within the following dwellings." Again, I'd like to suggest that that be broken out as item 3, where not permitted, so it's explicit and isn't overlooked by people when they're going through here, because the title of this is where permitted, and then at the end, we're talking about where it's not. So maybe it's just item
A, B, C,
3,
D, yes,
yeah,
sure. Read
not
that.
operated, and then on 15 would become item 4 then. Again, just a suggestion.
That wouldn't make sense.
I had a suggestion or a question on page 17, under O, renewal. So we go O, renewal 2B. This is where we talk about you must come in and say that, use it or lose it, which is kind of what we're saying. Over the last year, did you rent it out 30 times? Maybe it ought to say each short-term rental unit has to be rented, not just a short-term rental has been rented for a minimum. If I've got 4 of them, maybe I say, well, I did, that's 1 unit. I mean, just, again, we're nitpicking, but saying each unit, so that each of those 4 have to go 30. Isn't that what we're trying to say?
I think it's a good suggestion. It's just more clear that way.
We can make that change. And also just as sort of a reminder that we will be producing what's called an administrative handbook. And that handbook then will also basically spell that out pretty crystal clear.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Okay, I have a couple more before we move on from that. On page 16, notice of permit approval. Just for some clarification, why is the notice sent out to people within a 300-foot radius after it's been issued and not before?
Well, if they're not issued a permit and fail an inspection, then that means there's no permit. And the residents get a, notification of a permit that doesn't exist. So it's easier to send it after we've issued a permit, because then we're able to put the permit number 1. Number 2, we're able to, make sure everything's sort of locked in. So that's the reason why, because it's administrative. There's no appeal. There's no, if you send it before, then people might think they can appeal it. That there's no appeal to this permit. See, if you either meet it or you don't.
It's just notice.
Right.
Basically.
It's just a notice that a permit's been issued.
I will note there is an appeal process for those aggrieved by a decision on a short-term rental permit in N. So there is a limited basis for appeal.
That was my next.
But that would also be notice, you would be providing notice of those most likely to be aggrieved, in which case they could pursue an appeal if desired.
Okay.
And actually, one quick question that I have is, for the units that are essentially being grandfathered in outside of the VMU, given that the previous ordinance lacked enforcement, how do we know that the people who did maintain permits were operating in compliance? So, I mean, we're kind of rewarding somebody for having a prior permit, but we don't necessarily, do we know how they behaved under that permit or if there'd been complaints?
Complaints, none. So that's for the ones. I know we've had a few folks that have complained that why was there a permit issued for one particular one. I'll rename nameless. But again, it was issued. And so, and they are, all of them are submitting TOT. That's the other thing too, is they're doing what they need to do. So at this point, we don't have any that are outside of that, outside the realm.
Oh, good to hear.
And still on O, so people could go on for 50 years just getting yearly permit renewals without another inspection. I think it might be worthwhile to put, like, every 5 years, you have to go through another inspection as part of your renewal.
If that's the case, I would recommend that you, as a part of any recommendation, is to include that the renewal, that every 5 years a new inspection occurs. That'd probably be the best basis, correct, Taylor?
Yes, that's correct. That'd be a part of your motion if it's something you would want to recommend to city council, as that's a change in what's been presented to you today.
Yeah, I like that idea as well.
Makes sense.
Okay. And on your table in P, maybe it's me, but I don't understand the table. It says maximum number of renters. What constitutes a renter?
A renter is a person who signs a contract to rent said location for X amount of days.
So if I rent out one of these places, say a one-bedroom, and I bring in, all my grandchildren, so, and their significant others, that could add up to 6 or 7 people in that one room.
Yeah,
You're calling it
and
occupants.
you would be probably in gross violation of your rental agreement, number one, and then again, that's
But we don't know that. I mean, we're not saying what has to be in the rental agreement.
we are not. But again, that's the whole point of having an enforcement number and a local contact, because you would be amazed when people report out that there are more occupants than what's legally allowed because they see 12 people show up on an advertised 4-bedroom, because you have the knowledge and power now to know how many bedrooms are rented and how many people are rented.
But maybe changing it, you just use the word occupants. How many, maybe it's instead of renters, if that's the legal term, we don't really care about that. We care about occupants, is your
Right.
point, Jack, right?
And we don't define renters anywhere that I could find.
Huh, hadn't thought about that either.
Well, I don't like using the word occupant, because occupant means occupancy, and that's a building code issue.
Guests.
Well, so that's the problem, is there's the ability to do additional daytime guests. So the reality comes back to is when you sign it, when majority of these are on platforms, and on your platform you are a renter and you are renting, and you sign a contract with the operator to rent said room for X amount of days, and you are required to include the number of guests that will be with you. So that's sort of the check and balance, is using that common terminology that you see on these platforms.
So it's just not sinking into me. Just taking the first one, it says the studio, the maximum number of renters is 2. What does that mean? That 2 people could rent the studio at the same time, or?
It means 2 people will have the ability to rent that studio during a time period. So I you advertise your studio on a platform, and you advertise it as a studio unit. Your application says studio, so your advertisement better say maximum occupants or maximum renters 2. If it doesn't, because we look at it, you get a letter saying, hey, you have a studio unit, your max occupants is 2, but you're advertising for 4. Dial it down. Because again, on the back end, when I'm renting, I have to list the number of occupants. So if I'm renting a VRBO, it asks me the question, how many adults are there? And some platforms, the adults are 13 and up. On other platforms, it's 18 and up. I know this because I'm going through this right now, trying to get vacation rentals for summer. And so in that scenario, for my family, I got 3 adults because my daughter is over 18, and I got 2 kids. But on one platform, that's what it is on one platform. On another, I got a full-blown 5 adults because I have a gang of teenagers. So, but that's the renters. That's they're maxing out the renters. So again, renters are what you're contractually renting out. Guests are daytime guests. So a great example, what you may have is that, and it's again, not saying it's here, but I know other locations, you have a vacation rental for a house that's 4 bedrooms. You got 4 bedrooms, and say you got 8 people that are renting. Oh, hey, by the way, but my friends are in town also, and they have another Airbnb, and so we're all going to meet up to have a little pre-party before we go out to dinner. And so that's where the guests sort of come into play. And again, that's providing that transparency to the neighboring residents that there are a maximum number of renters. And then if they have guests during the day, which is a little bit harder to police, but it's there, that you have that number of guests that are supposed to disappear between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m.
Can I make a comment? I mean,
Of course.
I would suggest, Raphael, that I'm just looking at VRBO right now. To me, a renter is the person that signs the contract.
Right.
Okay? The guests are the people who are staying there. I'm looking here. They also talk about, like this unit sleeps 4. So for what, right? I mean, the number
Not
it
4
sleeps.
renters.
Right, not 4 renters. But there's definitely an occupancy here. I mean, I think calling people guests or occupants
Or
makes
overnight
sense to
guests
me.
or overnight
Overnight
occupants.
guests, right?
As
You know?
opposed to the
I think
daytime.
there is some
We'd be happy to
clarification.
we would be happy to change it to overnight guests.
I
That's probably
think
be
the
the best.
term overnight provides some clarity.
That's clear, and then that's different with the additional daytime guests, and so
Right.
they're both spelled out. That's a
Right,
good suggestion.
right. And it's consistent then.
Yeah.
They're all guests.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I tell you,
Daytime guests are still using the facilities, so that, is something to be considered.
it's a heck of a time finding a place that suits a family of 5. Let me tell you,
Yeah,
doing this all too well right now.
Well, I rented a whole month of September in Coronado. Minimum was 28 days. And of course, they didn't want unlawful detainers, so you couldn't go over 29 days. And whether I was there or not, I had to pay for the 28 days. And if I left and left people there to stay overnight, I was going to lose my deposit. I couldn't, in other words, sublease or go home,
Yeah.
let people stay.
Right.
They did have them, and it was a 5-bedroom. It was a large house, but I had lots of family and friends that came in and worked out. Along those lines, we're looking at the 4 or more, 10 maximum. I think that works as overnight guests, but 5 daytime guests seems a little low because I was in a 4,000 square foot unit. I know we don't have many of the big ones, but there's a big one down the street. The Dolphin House is a 5-bedroom, half-acre property, and 5 guests seems low. A studio, or the 1-bedroom with 2 seems spot on. I don't know, I mean, I know that's, you're throwing darts at a wall, as what's reasonable. Maybe is there a way that they could come in and ask for additional guests? I don't want to make it like an appeal or take it on a case-by-case basis, but no more than maximum of some number. It just seems 5 bedrooms, 5 guests seems an awful small
Well,
number to me.
It's
But-
pretty rare that we have 4 bedrooms or more here in the village.
I
It's just
think there's just one.
right, and there's always the ability to get a variance, and if they want to go that way,
If there's a violation, then they come in and they say, hey, or, okay, and they try, okay.
right.
I think you're better aiming low, particularly because things like weddings are not permitted. You know, the bigger you get, the more you're kind of inviting that.
And that's a good point. I know our current ordinance allows for special events to happen once. No,
Not in these.
not in this. No, yeah,
You can do it at your house, but you can't do it here.
correct. Yeah, that's yeah, pretty much.
Or you could go to the village on the corner.
Yeah, you mean the dirt lot in the park? Oh, I'm sorry.
No. At St. George's,
Oh, yeah, that one too.
because that's what he's going to be aiming at his events.
Yes, and
What he
then
told
we
us.
also have, our own, the Vets Hall to be rented. So there are a ton of private spaces around, not a ton, but there are private spaces around that you can do events.
Well, and as you had pointed out, the daytime guests are pretty tough to, unless it's complaint driven, a neighbor says, my gosh, they have tons of people, then you're going to be on it. But, if they have 7 or 9, are you really going to know a third person came in on a,
Yeah.
2-bedroom place for a half hour to just say hi and pick them up in their car? Yeah.
Yeah, and again, we currently don't have many at all complaints from our existing short-term rental stock, and so that's the good part. Other communities, this is a big deal, particularly those that are in more. Not to say that we're not a vacation destination, but more of a beach or the mountain resorts with cabins, etc. You got a lot of that going on there, so this portion is a very big deal.
Well, I'd point out the Tower, vacation rental above Tower Pizza that Max Hamburg owns. It's a 1-bedroom. It's 2,500 square feet. If he can only have 2 guests, I've been there with parties of 12 of us, and you got all kinds, you're throwing a ball, So it's above a pizza parlor next to, a bakery. You're not going to get a lot of complaint from that. Yeah. So
No.
I get it. We're trying to keep it tight, but within reason.
I
Right.
think this makes it a little easier if things do get out of hand to do the enforcement action.
I agree.
And again, that's the key too. It's not a just one and done and you're out. It's complaint driven. We receive a complaint, we follow up. In my experience in doing the short-term rental ordinance, 90% of the time, once you let the operator know that they're in violation of something, they clean it up pretty quick because they want to stay in the program. That's what it comes down to. It's the 10%, and even then, 10's a high number. It's the 5% that are out there that really, they don't care, and they'll eventually exit out anyways.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have anything?
So just for clarification, that you are recommending that P1 be changed to the maximum number of overnight guests.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
And in O, I'm not sure where to add it in for the inspection every 5 years.
Okay.
Yep.
And
And on O2B, we're going to say each short-term rental.
I would recommend for a motion that we could do, I know Raphael had some language that incorporated the table, so keep that as is and add an amendment to, just a moment. Requiring inspections every 5 years upon renewal. And revise language for clarity as directed by the Planning Commission. I think that would be sufficient to direct those few language edits that we've been speaking about.
great to have a lawyer, right?
Yeah, it's good. Can I ask one more question? I'm so sorry, I meant to
only
ask
got
it
one.
earlier. Well, last one. So I've got one, I come back in to renew, I do it right, we're limited to 40, and then there's a wait list. Are we ever going to do a lottery? I just say we have 10 people on a wait list for 20 years going, I can't believe that everyone automatically gets to renew. Is there any triggering that is more fair than that? Or should there be?
No. As someone who's actually managed a wait
there
list,
you did.
and by a wait list meaning it was about 80 properties deep, So essentially the way it worked and the way I envisioned it, because it was as fair as possible, it was, we close it out and then you get on the wait list. If someone drops out of the permit, we gave them a week to apply, and we followed up with one more email that says, hey, if you don't do this in 3 days, we followed up with a phone call, and then we jumped to the next person in line. Ultimately, in the end, we had to change the rule because we were jumping, and this is what I also envisioned, if we were jumping over about 10 people to get to the next person because they weren't ready. And eventually, an admin rule was made to say, hey, if you passed 3 times, we knocked your name off the list. So that way, people who were serious about short-term renting got on the list and got a chance. And then again, sort of applying lessons learned from other jurisdictions, having that sort of 30-night minimum really sort of says, hey, if you're realistic about this, if this is your quote-unquote side gig, then you're going to be doing this versus what others potentially do is just rent it, maybe 2 to 3 weeks out of the year and call it a day, and particularly 4th of July and Yule Fest, and that's it, which may work, but it prohibitively no. I mean, the whole point is it's a two-way street. You are generating income, additional income for your property that is on a short-term basis, and we are taxing that as a transit occupancy tax. If you're not willing to do that for under 30 days, then let's revert it back to what it's supposed to be, which is a long-term rental. And I know there are certain property owners that don't like doing the long-term rental game, but the reality comes back to is you have a long-term rental property, and let's put you back in the housing stock.
Or become a hotel, like you said.
Or become a hotel.
Okay, then the 2 other things that I suggested that, I don't know if we want to ask them to, and that is the reference to definitions, 11.3-1 for what a short-term rental is.
And your other change.
Yeah, well, that was, so I was just asking on that one, is that
Yeah.
something we want to do? Yeah. Okay. And then in item D, putting in either a new section 3 or a new section 4 that is rental units that cannot be permitted.
If I could respond just for the definitions, I would defer to how we refer to definitions throughout the zoning code. I'd have to double check, but if it's standard practice for us to cross-reference the definitions section, we can go ahead and do that. But for consistency throughout the zoning code, I would keep no cross-references if that's what's currently in the code throughout the chapter 11 or title 11.
Yeah, we currently don't really reference. We try not to reference out back to certain sections because they may change. So, we really rely on the
All
definitions
the more
being.
reason to reference them.
And for ease of navigation, so if you're actually looking at the municipal code online, you go to Title 11, all of the definitions are in that Chapter 3, and then the rest of the substantive materials below in the different chapters. So I would kind of defer to just leaving them without cross references at this time. And then for, let's see, where permitted, I think that would be encompassed in our revisions to language to kind of clarify the intent of the ordinance as directed by Planning Commission.
But clarification, we do have or will have a short-term rental definition.
We already do have one.
Thank
There
you.
is one.
Okay.
Yes, it's in 11.3.1. I looked it up. So not that one, but the others?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I posted the recommendation back up. If you want to put the slide back on. So I don't know if you guys can read that.
No.
But we can make a motion that the slide that's on the screen right now
That
be
Rafi can read.
adopted.
That Rafi can read.
Yeah.
Taylor can
exactly.
too.
Oh,
Oh, we can turn around.
read it.
Oh, I didn't know it was up there.
Well, hell, if we're up to that, I'd like to, is it time to make a motion?
I believe so, if nobody has any other
Then I
comments
propose
or
a motion.
questions.
That, to recommend that, city staff recommends that the planning commission recommends an adoption of resolution 26-1 with the amendment to section D, rental permits not allowed, the amendment to section O for a 5-year inspection, and the amendment to section P for the maximum number of overnight guests, and other clarifications as directed by us during this session.
I second that.
Just want to clarify, does that motion include the text on the screen that there's an amendment to the table 11.4?
No, it doesn't.
I would
Oh, yeah, it does.
amend the motion to include that text 11.4.
Provide clarity on that.
Yeah. Provide clarifications as directed? Yes. Do we include what's on the screen currently?
I just wanted to be clear that your motion encapsulates everything that's on the screen currently, because I didn't hear something about
Correct.
table 11.4. Okay, great.
Correct.
Thank you.
Everything that's on the screen right now. Just needs a
Perfect.
second.
I second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? None? Passes 5-0.
That was a nail biter.
That was a mouthful.
Thank you very much. This is long overdue,
Yeah, I really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
that was a
and
great idea.
I think you've done a great job.
Last comment, is very interesting that the city council brought this up a year and a half ago to allow vacation rentals in all residential neighborhoods. And I was going berserk and coming in time and time again, and I couldn't get people really motivated to come in and say, "Are you really?" And then we took it and went, "Oh, a reasonable. We're not even doing what we're allowing now."
Right.
So it really went full circle, but it took a lot of input from a lot of people to figure out that we don't want the town, given our Christmas vacation and how locals were being mistreated with parking and bathrooms and trash, we certainly didn't want vacation rentals in neighborhoods. So I applaud you too.
Well, and again, this is an example of us taking our time to really vet it out. As we started with what do we want to do, to do we want to do everything, and then just slowly morphing it. So we went to the council. We did about, I want to say 4 or 5 rounds with the council before you even saw it. And again, that's just asking those questions. Do you want X or Y? Do you want A or B? And but again, it seemed we eventually got a consensus, and this is where we're moving forward. And so, hats off to you guys as well for providing additional input. So, appreciate it.
Okay. So there's no discussion items listed. Planning commissioners' comments, or did you just make them?
Planning director.
Yeah. Yeah, but any from the commission? Everybody's had their say. Community Development Director's report.
Well, thank you. Again, kudos on a job well done. We'll forward this off to the City Council. This will likely appear in February at their meeting, so we'll schedule that out. I do have a couple items to go over. One, we will be having a closed session with the City Council regarding pending litigation at 1704 Mission Drive, which is at the corner of Alisal and Mission. So that's all I can give you at this point. Applicant knows what he needs to do, and we'll go from there. As a part of that same meeting, they will be giving a sign ordinance update. So as you know, we went through painstakingly a very long meeting in November to go over the sign ordinance, transcribed all your comments and packaged back up. And so now we're back at the City Council with 2 questions. So one is take a look at what's been produced by both the DRC and the Planning Commission, but also some of those questions that this commission had sort of brought up as to, well, the DRC said this, city staff said this, and the Planning Commission said this. So now the council kind of needs to make a decision. So again, that'll be also going next Monday.
I'm sorry, before city council next month.
Correct. And again, that's more of what we did with the vacation rental ordinance. They're not adopting anything. They're just providing direction to city staff so that we can then finally go through a very similar process as we make the changes, ship it off to Taylor to review, who's done a fabulous job of helping me out with the ordinances. And then we will actually repackage our sign ordinance back to the DRC for a recommendation to the Planning Commission, and then the Planning Commission a recommendation to City Council. So we are not done amending our code this year, and we're just just a few days into the new year. We will be having a DRC meeting scheduled out for next week, next Thursday. We'll be polling our members to ensure we do have a quorum for our 2 items. Our UBEC committee, our Urban Growth Advisory Committee, our applications are now available. We're going to post that as a newsflash on our website tomorrow. It should have gone out as part of utility billing as of our newsletter for the month. If not, look for it this month. But again, we're looking for quite a few members for that. I will email each. I'll be emailing this commission separately. I'll be looking for 2 members for the Planning Commission to sit on that UBEC. It is actually a series of meetings that we're envisioning to go over. Should we expand our urban growth boundary? Should we just leave it the way it is? What are the pitfalls? What are the not? So again, it's sort of I take it as a deep dive mini 4 or 5 course session on should we or should we not? What are the pros? What are the cons? And then do a report out to the council. And then we have no scheduled items as of yet for February. A February meeting is actually heavily dependent on our DRC meeting when it's scheduled. If we don't have a meeting in February, we most certainly will have one in March. We have annual reporting to take care of. So we'll be having our general plan annual report, our housing element annual report, and hopefully actually one business item. So again, this ordinance before you this evening is actually one of a couple ordinances will be coming out for an amendment. The sign ordinance is another huge one. And then on my goal list for the year is updating our municipal code for some of the new state laws that went into effect, but also ditching our antiquated subdivision ordinance, which was adopted in 1986. So, hey man, Top Gun was all the rage back then. So we need it fixed. So that concludes my report for this evening.
One question, if I could. Are we involved at all in the BID that the city, I think, has budgeted some money to do a study to see if there's going to be a business improvement district? Will it come to us, or is that's not in our...
It's not in the commission's purview at this point. It's more of we have an RFP that was completed. We did procure a consultant who's doing some work, and we'll be having meetings that are directly to whether that's going to be formed or not. It's sort of its own separate track. It's not necessarily a planning commission. It's more of an admin city manager. We may touch it here and there. Porter has an informal presentation, but that's as far as it goes.
Thank you.
Okay. No more. I think we're done. Meeting's adjourned at 7:13.
Easy peasy.
Good job.